Hey everybody, this is Talking of Carl back again for another movie spoiler review of another Valentine's Day month movie, Friends with Benefits, starring Justin Timberlake and Mila Kunis. And uh, I remember I didn't watch this. I was like still not like still in my late teens, early 20s when this movie came out. Oddly enough, it came out the same year as Captain America: First Avengers and Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part Two. So it's been quite a long time. So it's a unique kind of rom com. The reason I actually dig this movie, and I think a fair bit of people actually dig this movie, is the fact that just like with my other review on the channel, which you can still check out on youtube.com/talking of Carl, when I talk about Four Christmases and the other movie that I talked about that I just did recently, and I'm just blank on that. I've been doing these like a lot, these past few days. So it's like, uh, shoot, Destination Wedding. That was it. And just like with Destination Wedding and Four Christmases, this movie has some nice nuances here. Basically, uh, Justin Timberlake playing Dylan Harper and Mila Kunis playing Jamie Relis. Jamie Relis being like an executive headhunter for New York City, and ends up recruiting Dylan, who's this Los Angeles art director for GQ Mag, to bring over to meet the people at GQ Magazine who have an appreciation for his work that they've seen it, many times on these apps and whatnot from LA. So they hire Jamie to go pick him up, show him around New York, and trying to convince him to, sign with them and what have you. Now, at first, well, again, ahead of myself, one of the funniest parts in this movie is at the beginning. There's some surprising cameos here. One, because a nice little touch here where, let me just set it up here. Jamie, who's getting broken up with by her former boyfriend, played by Andy Samberg, aka Jake Peralta, before he actually got a freaking job. Not Andy Samberg, but look like what Jake Peralta looked like when he in his teens before he decided to become a cop. Just like a slubby dude with no kind of like prospects. So he ended up breaking with her, got the nerve calling her, eyes large and weird. Mila Kunis got beautiful eyes. Don't make no mistake about that. And then Dylan is meeting up with his former, he thought girlfriend, but then turned to ex-girlfriend in the blink of an eye, played by Emma Gwen Stacy Cruella Stone, who I completely forgot was in here for a brief moment. And she breaks up with him, calling him like emotionally, because I forgot like who Andy Samberg was supposed to be playing as. I'm just calling him Jake Peralta. He ends up breaking up with Jamie, calling her emotionally damaged, while Cruella calling Dylan emotionally distant, and give that those lame excuses just to break up with them. Oh, we can still just be friends? And it's like, fuck you. And then Jamie walks down the street with her, I guess, friend. We never see her more than just this one shot. I I think we saw her again maybe at the party, but I honestly just go with me on this. You only see her one time, you forget her. She's not even like a thing. It was just a shame. It's like, while you're establishing a person that you're not even gonna give like any decent time with, just to establish they're good friends, but at least good girlfriends. But they pass by. This is the funny part here. These rows of posters advertising the movie The Ugly Truth, which coincidentally is like kind of like I like to think it's kind of like an inside joke for within like a rom-com, because they actually make fun of rom-coms in this movie, and it's pretty doggone funny because like The Ugly Truth, when I first saw it, it's like I didn't have an issue with it, but it wasn't something like that really stand out. It's like yeah, this movie came out like at least 2 years prior. It actually did pretty well itself, but I think Katherine Heigl is like was fairly blackballed in Hollywood for quite some time. Probably like on set like issues, and like nobody really liked working with her. Apparently, I can't remember the exact details, but I do know that nobody liked working with her. I'm not sure how Seth Rogen feels about her. I don't know if he ever spoke on that kind of thing, but it's a nice little inside joke that kind of like a dig. I figure it's not even just a dig in the movies, dig into like Katherine Heigl. You hear Jamie's saying "screw you, Katherine Heigl," and it's just like it was just funny. That was really funny to me. But then once Jamie and Dylan meet up in the Newark International Airport, maybe this is how I would probably see it, but because Dylan's from LA, he has like he looking at New York in a particular way is how I'm like looking at it, because I never been to New York. I acknowledge that it's one of the greatest cities in the world for a reason, but it's just like I don't know. From the outside looking in, New Yorkers can seem pretty damn rude and just, I won't say mean-spirited. This probably might be going a little bit too far, but just kind of like from just the outside looking in, or at least from what I'm hearing, or at least talk with people who've been from New York or visited, it's like if you bump into them, there's no excuse me because of a simple mistake. They look like you bump into them, they kind of look like they about to gear up for a fight. Like, what's up? Kind of attitude. It's like whoa, and like you hear like Jamie got that New York just attitude about her, just like cursing and like just I won't say unnecessary rude, just like New York rude, where it's kind of like typical. And like as soon as he like steps out of that New York zone, and like people looking at her like all weird, like oh sorry, kind of attitude. Is like wow, it's just like but it's just New York seems like just like a odd bunch. No offense for people from New York. It's just like I don't know. It's just like me being from Chicago. I'm looking at that like oh god, that's odd. Anyway, she showed him around. They end up going to this like after he goes to this meeting he has to get to. Hours later, she's waiting outside. He's convinced he wants to take the job, but he's still he's not completely sold on taking the job just yet. He has about till midnight to decide. So she spent some time showing around like New York, and not the touristy places like he mentioned. Like I know New York. I seen Seinfeld, and it's like not the. She was like, no, not the touristy crap you be seen on TV. I want to show you the real New York. So they took her to this little like outside dining area. They bumped to Shaun White for some dang on reason. This is like Shaun White where he still had long hair, which, you know, it's weird because I kind of miss his long hair for some damn reason. But now he's like, you know, kind of like cut in a way. It's like, God, it's like the fact that because like seeing Shaun White having to grow up and cut his hair makes me feel sad inside. But then they, you know, go to like Times Square, jump into this like flash mob. No, I think it was like before that. She takes him to this spot on top of a skyscraper. This little corner where it's like there's no cell reception, so she can, and there's only spot where you actually you're high enough to see the stars in the city, so that way she can like be alone with her thoughts. And she never took nobody there. It was kind of like, okay, she, like you really want this dude to get this job? It's like, did you do this with every kind of client? She says no, but it's like, this is kind of odd. This is weird. It's like, what makes him special? Whatever. But then she takes him down to Times Square where they end up in this like flash mob, which I personally think is a fucking weird thing to be a part of. Like this flash mob when they just dance. And I know it's meant for camaraderie and everything like that. I just think it's kind of strange outside looking in. I'm an introvert, so I guess I view it as being strange, but I'm old enough to understand the purpose of it, though. I just never will participate, and I will still think it's freaking weird. Then he just agrees, like, I'll take the job, which means he has to uproot his life from LA to move to New York, which I guess GQ hooked him up with a nice little apartment, which New York is notorious when it comes to their expensive apartments, especially if you're in Manhattan. I think it's Manhattan or Lower East Side or something like that. But it's a nice little swanky place. But you meet up with like the sports editor played by Woody Harrelson, who's also playing like a gay man, and was he funny little moments where he's like trying to like, you keep asking like Dylan, are you sure you're not gay? I'm very sure. But then him and Jamie and Dylan, like, still, even long after he signed the contract, agreeing that he has to, just to make sure she gets her commission, he has to make sure he stay with the job for a year minimum, so she can at least guarantee like her commission and everything like that, and don't get fired or go to another job. So they still end up hanging out, going, she invites him to her little house party at her apartment, and you see like they like getting close, like as like good platonic friends, where they end up writing on each other's faces and with invisible like ink until like certain light show where it's like when it's dark and the light show, and it's like kind of like highlights the art on the face. And he, Dylan drew cat face whiskers and stuff like that on Jamie's face, which was kind of funny. With her large eyes, kind of like really accentuate the cat look, which kind of makes it even more funnier. Just kind of like a nice little, I don't want to call it a happy accident, but just brilliant because it fits for Mila Kunis because of her eyes. It makes it work. It only would even be better if she had some kind of like headphones with cat ear things on top, and it's kind of like makes it all work. But then they chill in their house, in her place, alone watching rom-coms. It's like this fake rom-com with Jason Segel or Segel, and I think Quincy Jones' daughter. What's her name? Something Jones. Rashida Jones. That's what it is. And she's a great character actor, by the way. I love Rashida Jones. And they're watching this fake rom-com thing with these two, and they're just poking fun at it because it's like, because this movie was Friends with Benefits was directed, screenplay by Will Gluck. I'm pretty sure they had a hand in the writing, and it seems like they probably watched a significant amount of rom-coms over the years to know where to poke fun at certain things. Like, you hear Dylan's dialogue about how, like, when that weird song, which it does actually play in a significant amount of rom-coms, which is weird. It's like, hey, 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 hey. And I don't know what that song is, but you hear it in tons of rom-coms. Just from that little thing I did, you know what I'm talking about. And like he points out, like, yeah, you play that song every time you want. You notice they play that song every time. Like, hey, didn't you have a good time? Yeah, you did. It's just very manipulative, and it's like it play extra cheesy, just to highlight how like corny some rom-coms can be. Just like that, kind of like manufactured rom-coms with no nuance to them. And I like that moment. But then they get into this conversation about, because they mentioned earlier about how like they the bad breakup, their last bad breakups, and they come to an agreement to where they're gonna have like to be friends with benefits, and they'll have zero emotion behind it, no supporting each other, emotionally, not that typical boyfriend girlfriend stuff like you usually do. It's just the physical act, getting each other off, and then like staying just good friends, which goes on for some time. They even mentioned about like certain the quirkiness things about them, that like every time he climaxes he sneezes, which is fucking weird. Like, who does that? And one time he sneezed in her dang on face, and it's like, that's just fucking gross. Even prior to COVID, that's just fucking gross. And he keeps his socks on during sex. I mean, I hear some people actually do that, so that is not totally strange. It's probably fairly common. Mostly because some people's feet get cold easily, I guess. I don't know. And then she complained about how small her boobs are, and like I still quote this to this day because I got this from this movie. This line from Justin Timberlake when he mentions like there's still boobs, and it's like that's my mindset, and I remember quoting this. It's always in the subconscious of my brain every time I hear a girl complain how big her boobs are and how hers are back, or how small some girls' boobs are, or whatever like that, I immediately go back to my data bank in my brain, and I immediately remember that scene and quote Justin Timberlake's line, "There's still boobs." I'm a guy. To me, there's still boobs. Big, small, they're tits. I do not care as much as you care about like the whole nuance aspect about them. Can I play with them? Can I suck on them? Can I play with the nipples? Can I caress them? Massage them? If I can do any of that, I can give two shits. Some guys are breast man and some guys are ass man. Like, they're still tits. As long as they're tits on a woman, natural tits. I mean, personally, there should be natural tits on a woman. It's like, I don't really dig that whole plastic surgery bullshit personally. I'm sorry. But as long as there's still natural tits on a woman, I can give two shits. Two shits with tits. But then, after one of their little scenes, right when they were getting into it, then Jamie's mother burst in out of the blue. This kind of like can tell she's grew up in the 70s, just by her, like, the way she dressed and carry herself. She's like, you can tell she's very, like, new age type, not totally new age, but just like, she grew up in the 70s, and she's like, she probably fucked, a fair amount of rock stars backstage in her day, if you catch my drift. And at a certain point, Jamie come to a realization that she's like, I think I'm ready to, like, start dating again, and we should probably put an end to this. And it's like, okay. And it's like, very smartly, which guys should pay attention to, when a girl, even if they're in the act, as soon as he says no, cut it. Not to cut off the penis or anything like that, but just, that's it. That's the end of the conversation. As soon as he says no at any point, there's don't care if it's halfway there. I don't care if you're nearly about to climax. If she says no, zip it. That's it. Done deal. So Justin Timberlake backs the fuck off. And it's like, okay, cool. That's an discussion with that. He's kind of, you see the disappointment in his eyes, but he's like, he understood, he listens, and he backs the hell off. And then further kudos were the fact that they help each other out, trying to, like, they spot like a girl or a guy. It's like, yo, go there talking to him, like, and, pretty much trying to, not their wingman, but just like there for support kind of situation. You see this, they see this woman on a set of stairs reading a book, with some encouraging. He goes over there, talks to her, then, he walks right back. And it's like, oh yeah, she just here, she's a nice woman. She's from, like, some country, like Dutch, or not Romania, but something like that. And she's here with her husband celebrating their anniversary, kind of thing. Which is like a nice little moment, because the fact that he had a nice conversation, he didn't try to, like, get in her pants or, like, whatever. He's like, chat with her, nice, cordial, shook her hand, backed away, and it's like, acknowledge the fact that she's in a serious relationship, and, like, didn't try to do anything more beyond that. Completely cordial. Then, they walk by the, it's like, that was Grand Central Park or something in New York, and they took notice of this guy who's, like, staring at the trees, and she's looking at him like, see, that's nice. This is like, how rare it is to see a guy who's a person in general who's out. Well, at least maybe you should point out the guys. It's nice to see a guy who's actually here to enjoy nature and not to ogle women. So she goes over there, which is like a nice little, I'm pretty sure there's women who do this, but it's refreshing to see, like, a woman taking the initiative and going up to a guy saying, like, hey, what's up, woo woo, instead of, because it's always kind of like not a stereotype, but it's always some kind of standard where it's got to be the guy to approach the girl. But it's nice to see every once in a while, if a girl thinks a guy is cute, and he either is too nervous to go himself, or he's not taking notice, she can go over there and introduce herself. And it's not breaking any kind of, like, it's breaking barriers, I should say, because you're not, like, bogged down with gender stereotypes. So, she gets a date with him. And they go on a date, and she has a 5-date rule that she wanted, to do before she actually ends up sleeping with him. And then he says, like, you're worth the wait, everything like that. Because he's like a doctor, a children's doctor or something like that. More specifically, treating children with cancer. And she thinks this is like a dream come true kind of thing. After the 5 days, she ends up sleeping with him, steps out for a second and grabs some coffee and take notice that he's trying to sneak out, and then kind of realize he's just another dick. who's just, had like a decent amount of patience to wait 5 days. She shouldn't even said, she has a 5-day rule. Because if you give like a timetable, a guy will wait that crap out as long as possible just to make sure he gets the box. She should have kept that mouth shut until, not in an offensive way, mind you. I'm just saying, like, she should have kept it to herself she's going to hold out till 5 days until she sees any kind of strangeness coming from this dude. However, in the meantime, Dylan's having a tough time meeting this woman who's behaving very weirdly. It's like she's sniffing him, licking his armpit, and growling and stuff like that. And it's like, where did you pick this girl up from? And it's like, it's very odd watching her. She's and how I'm pretty sure they was giggling on set just watching this girl just go ham over Justin Timberlake, just like it's just like and sniffing him all over. It's like his arm is like she really like went hard on his arm. It was just like, it's very awkward, just the weirdness of it. But after he hears about how bad the doctor was, he invites her because she initially had plans for this 4th of July weekend to hang out with her mom since she stopped by to crash at her place. But then she ended up ditching her own daughter to go hang out with some dude because her mom had this like kind of like tumultuous past where she hopped from one guy to the next. And then she always had this running joke about how like, like, man, I remember your father, maybe it was Middle Eastern or Filipino. And it's like you never know, like, she ever came clean. It's kind of like the Joker from the Dark Knight, where it's like you always tell him different stories before he kills you. She's kind of like that way, it's like telling different versions of how, like, I want to say different versions of how they met, but what kind of ethnicity this man is. She mentions Russian one time, and Mila Kunis is, known to have Russian heritage. So I think it was like a nice little, Easter egg kind of thing. There'll be probably more than likely that it'd be funny if that was the actual true thing, but we never knew. But anyway, because I heard like Mila Kunis speak Russian, and it's just like, man, every time I hear Russian, I think like if I watched a significant amount of like 80s and 90s movies when they have like, bad guy Russian, and it's like I hear bad guy in my head, and it's like when I hear a spit of Russian, and it's like, oh God, you're a commie. It's like, although it's just like with with the accent, it's weirdly kind of hot. Just like with Florence Pugh when she does her Russian accent for White Widow from the Marvel movies, is really kind of hot. Maybe because the bad girlness of her kind of makes it hot when normally Russian isn't. It's not like French. It's not like French or Spanish, where it's kind of like naturally is kind of erotic. Russian is very authoritative kind of thing. So it's kind of like, just like Japanese and German, it's like a very authoritative kind of language, just matter of factly kind of situation, But, Dylan invites her to come along with him to a trip to LA for the 4th of July weekend, and she ends up meeting Dylan's father, Dylan Sr., his sister Annie, and his nephew, Sammy. And you early in the film, every once in a while you hear Dylan talk on the phone with Annie, and you talking about like you hear stories. They're having subjects about the father, and you just see the dour look on Dylan's face, and you come to realize, he has, early on said Alzheimer's, which is it was like a very sad moment because I never met anybody or known anybody who's dealing with, like a relative with Alzheimer's. And, you wouldn't wish that on anybody because that is very debilitating. And I like to think they handle it pretty well here with respect, as far as like how like people are coping with, relatives with Alzheimer's and stuff like that. Because sometimes he recalling, like people, looking at people, and he's recalling different stuff in the past is not happening right now, or he's talking about like a boat he doesn't have anymore, kind of thing. So if you know anybody with like with Alzheimer's and what have you, leave a comment below and let me know if you watched this movie before, how well have they handled that? Because like if they handle it with, because I like to think they handle it with pretty decent respect. I'm pretty sure they should have done some fair bit of research. They didn't treat it as like a joke or anything like that. They played this very seriously. But then you see Annie showing Annie showing Jamie these family photos of Dylan, in his younger years, and he had like a crisscross face. If you ever known like the rap duo Crisscross back in the 90s, 1992, where their iconic song to this day, I think it's one of the iconic songs of the 90s, Jump. And he went as Crisscross for Halloween 3 years in a row when he was a kid. And as she's, in her room and he's trying to sneak in, trying to get some nookie, and she's poking fun of him because, she started playing, Jump on her phone. And of course, it's Justin Timberlake we're talking about. So he knows how to dance and he knows how to freaking sing. And it's like, you hear that, like, I don't even know the words. Yeah, don't try to compare us. Something that you never had. They really want to jump. How high? Real high. I know I'm butchering. It's been a while, but it's just like when I hear that, it just brings me back because I was like half their age when they made this song. Back in 1992. I was very young, but like growing up, I did remember hearing that. But they end up like, getting, closer and having sex that night. But, she, as they sneak on top of the Hollywood sign, which is supposed to be closed off, I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure it's closed off. I've been, seen certain like comics or movies when like had like gates. I think it's legit like closed off, but people still sneak in to hang out at the Hollywood sign. But she's trying to have him open up about the whole Alzheimer's things, and you can tell it's like a very sore subject for him because Dylan considered his father like a hero. He always went to him when he had problems and he took his advice. But now he's having a hard time adjusting to the fact that how his father is now, and the fact that his mother left them, I guess, right when that kind of thing was happening, I guess. And, now, there's just like, Annie is taking care of him in LA, and she has a kid of her own. It's kind of like informs how Dylan operates when it comes to relationships, being emotionally distant. It just somehow it's like he parallels that with his father, and like because when things got hard, his mother left them. So he just doesn't want to get in that kind of situation where it's like when the chips are down, there's no way he can trust anybody to stick around. Right when because the boy is like in that magician phase, so he's trying to do all these little tricks, and he's trying to saw Jamie in half. While she's in the box, she overhears Dylan and Annie having a conversation, and Annie bring up the fact that you haven't brought any girl over to the house before, and I can tell how you like this girl. You even like spent the night in her room and he snuck out, the next morning. But Dylan just out of frustration because he just wanted to get Annie off his back, but he just says all these mean things about her being Jamie being emotionally damaged, and he doesn't want to be with a girl like that. So Jamie ended up leaving early back to New York, not returning Dylan's calls. And then once he finally confronts her, he is coming to the realization that she overheard him, and now she just ends the friendship entirely now. But then once she got word from her bosses that they heard rumors that Dylan's been thinking about going to another company, she has to go right back to him, which she doesn't want to do. Talking about like, you're going to make me lose my commission. Like, why are you looking at other people? And he's like, I'm not. I'm just, I just had one chat with him and wasn't going to do anything. But this kind of really blows up the relationship, without actually taking the time to, what they needed to do at that moment was taking the time to breathe for a second, think reasonably. They both obviously are heated, but it's like they had enough time apart to actually like trying to settle things down, and and he's, I'm pretty sure he's acknowledging that he hurt her, but she also needs to acknowledge the fact that he's trying to, well, initially he wanted to apologize, but the fact that she just like completely, and this is where the typical, even though they poke fun at rom-coms and trying to do something like some subtle nuances to this kind of movie, it's still kind of like, this still feels in some aspect manufactured kind of drama to keep them, third act fight kind of situation to keep them separated, where she should have just say like, hey, you hurt me when you say that kind of stuff. I thought we was friends, and he could have just explained like, hey, I didn't mean what I say, which he did, but the fact that she some women just need like a moment to just like, because they are emotional creatures. She was extremely hurt, reasonably. She was extremely hurt because like she already had to hear how emotionally damaged she was from her ex. Now she got to hear from a guy she thought she was a friend and had like a good thing going on with him. So that kind of compounds the problem. He has to make sure she she should have answered his calls and give him allow him time to explain himself and apologize, which he does, but she just completely rebuffs him. And then he kind of compounds the problem on his end by it's kind of like meets like bad energy with bad energy. So they're just blowing up entirely. So Jamie has to sit down with her mom, and mom acknowledges the fact that she can't wait around to look for a Prince Charming. She has to be open to the fact that when she knows when she sees it, she doesn't have to just sit on a butt and wait for it. And she acknowledges the fact that she's like this way because how her mother is with going to man, and she doesn't want to end up doing that kind of thing. And then while Annie and her son are out to DC for this kind of I don't know if it was school or something she had to go to DC for, and Dylan Sr. is staying with Dylan Jr. in New York for a while until they get back. He gets through another episode. Dylan catches up with his father, and he finds him sitting at a restaurant with his pants off. And while the other customers are just like looking and staring and all the other stuff, Dylan, just to make sure, like, because this is his father, it's like, like he's not going to like let him, like, we're just two dudes sitting with their pants off. Screw it. And he's going to have a talk with his father. And just like, taking, Jamie's advice and just talking with his father while he's having like a lucid moment. And his father goes on about how, like, he understands that he's like this way even because of what happened between him and his mother. And he goes on the story about how, like, there's a woman that he met before he met his mother that he had very strong feelings with, but because of his pride, he didn't pursue her because he didn't give like a reason. A detailed reason. He doesn't know. Because he can't remember it because it's been so long, but he knew it was something stupid, which you can relate. How many times you fight with somebody over something trivial or stupid, and you let your pride get in the way instead of just acknowledging a fault and making amends. And he doesn't want his son end up doing that because he's losing someone great in his girl. So thanks to Jamie's mom, Dylan knows where, like, kind of like set it up where Jamie is at Grand Central Station, and like a flash mob happens, playing Jump and this other song, Closing Time, and they end up making up, and they go on like an actual real date. And there was like a joke they brought up, which was played in the trailers. I still remember that because it's a very funny line about, like, because Jamie mentions, like, why don't they ever, show the movie after the big kiss? And Dylan, just right on cue, great wit on his part. I was like, yeah, they do. It's called porn. And it kind of harkens back to that line when they're on this date in this cafe, just looking at each other, and just and then all of a sudden they just like move the stuff on the side of the table and then start going at it like, just alarming the other patrons, and then the movie ends. And it's a nice little moment to kind of undercut that little typical, even though they play that stupid hey right, at the end while they're going to this little diner thing. And it's like, God, that part, like, it's like, oh God. And I think they did it on purpose because it's just like, did you enjoy did you walk away happy kind of thing? Did you enjoy the movie kind of thing, as he pointed out earlier in the film? And I like it when they, like I said, they harken back to that conversation. It's like, instead of just doing the typical, this is usually a movie ends right as they're going to this little shop and kind of fades the black kind of situation and the credits roll. But no, you see them go into that thing, sit down, take a moment, and they just looking at each other, and you thinking like, oh, because there was like a split second when I first watched this. It was like a split second thinking like, did they make a mistake? Because they looking at each other like very weirdly. Then, it's like, F it. And then it's like they move the stuff and they start making out really hard. And then the movie ends. And it's like, I'm glad they kind of, do a twist to that. It's like, no, they really into each other. They'll be into each other. And I think this is a pretty damn good movie. Nice little, like I said, like Destination Wedding and Four Christmases. And I will implore you to go check those reviews out on the channel, on my channel, because I like these kind of movies. They do certain twists to, and also there's a couple of other Christmas movie reviews that I did, like the Thanksgiving Day Parade and like Mistletoe and Menorahs, which is getting a lot of views, and you guys are like hella generous. thank y'all for checking those out. I hope y'all enjoying those, because I explained why I enjoy the nuances in that film. So like when they're, because I watched a lot of movies growing up, and so I can recall like there's certain things that's like easily manufactured melodrama, and there's something like this where a writer and director wants to step out of that and try to turn it on its head. And I want to highlight movies like that, so that way you don't feel like, hey, I'm sick and tired of these typical rom-com things. Like here, I just cited these kind of movies where they're not your typical rom-com. There's some nuances to them, so there's not too typical at the very least. But let me know what you think of Friends with Benefits. If you watched this, did you enjoy it? Do you like it? Is there anything you didn't like about it? Please leave a comment below. I will see you guys next time for another review. I think at least there's definitely at least a significant amount of movies I want to do for Black History Month. But I also will eventually be doing like a movie review for Death of the Nile and Uncharted that's coming out. Death of the Nile coming out this weekend, and next weekend is Uncharted movie that I want to do a review for. But there's going to be Black History Month movies the movies for Black History Month that I'm going to be covering for the rest of the month. I just want to do like at least a few rom-coms for Valentine's Day. And then I just want to wrap up the rest with Black History Month. I had to figure out like a nice balance, because I already got like, Keanu Reeves stuff to wrap up for the month of Keanu Reeves, but excuse me, Keanu Reeves month. And I want to wrap it up with the John Wick series this Thursday. So look forward to that. So I will see you guys next time, and take care, be well, happy Valentine's Day, happy Black History Month.